before we get into the episode, I just want to send a reminder to everybody. If you are needing support, please check out our free, absolutely free Facebook group. It is totally online. You can search it up, Getting Sober Group. I will leave a link in the description to that group. If you don't have a Facebook account, that's totally okay. We love you anyways. But if you need support or you want to support others and you want to be a part of an online community, we know it gets tough to pick up that phone, but maybe it's easier to post in that Facebook group. You need an anonymous post, you can do that. So check that Facebook group out. If you have any questions regarding what we're doing, if you have any inquiries or you need support privately, feel free to go to our website, gettingsoberyoung.com, and fill out the contact form. We love each and every one of you and appreciate all y'all support. Check out this episode. Layne LaMaglio.
Are we starting?
We're starting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Powerful name.
First of all, I can't tell you how many times I've said that is a fucking sick name. Layne LaMaglio sounds like someone you want to be.
Sounds like an actor, dude. Like Sylvester Stallone.
It's even better when you say it right. It's Layne LaMaglio.
What? Where are you from?
I'm from here. I'm from Austin. But that's not where the name's from.
Where are your people from?
Yeah,
my people are from Sicily.
Okay, across the pond.
They're from Sicily, but it's very, very misleading. I did the 23andMe thing and sent it to my dad, who my dad was always, we're Italian, we're Ladegos,
Yeah.
And turns out I don't have really any Italian in
Really?
me. No. Oh, no, I'm all like Scandinavian, like Viking, Anglo-Saxon, all that.
You do look like a Viking.
Yes.
No, thank you.
Yeah, you do look like a Viking. And you got the name for it.
Yeah.
Apparently the Vikings weren't as tough as or not as tough.
They weren't as tall. They found like a mass grave in Denmark of like 500 Vikings, and the average height of a male was like 5'5". But people, I think, were shorter.
So we're a Viking. Because we're like 5'5".
Yeah, we're 5. I'm 5'7" on a good day.
We all do have those Uhtred beards going.
True. We're working on them. We're still in early, puberty.
We got to get permission to grow the beard out at this point because the women don't like it.
I told my wife, I'm like, you can't control me no more.
Yeah.
Well, after like 4 or 5 years, he finally breaks the chains.
I've had my beard for 10 years, and ever since I got out of prison, and my wife and I got married, got together after I got out of prison, so I had my beard, so she had never seen my face. And when COVID hit, to properly wear a mask, you're not supposed to have a beard, so they say. So I shaved it, and she told me I could grow it back.
She's like, you know what?
I liked you better with the beard.
Yeah, I was like, this is compensating for a weak chin,
Yeah. Well, apparently, like back in the day, like having a beard to go into battle would lessen the blow of anything that you got hit with.
I don't think that that's accurate.
I bet you it is. I bet we look it up.
No. I don't think that really works.
Oh, probably not. Well, no, I think it does. I think it's scientifically.
I think it's scientifically.
Yeah, I mean, you literally have like a whole layer of fur cushion.
It may not be substantial.
Yeah, I don't think it would matter
best,
for like an axe.
Yeah. Or definitely not an axe. Yeah. But what about a shield? Like a shield push?
A shield.
Maybe a punch to the face.
I guess so.
We'll test it.
We'll test it.
We'll test
it.
Gladiator.
Off camera. Yeah.
Right.
Not me.
Well, no, he has the beard.
Oh, yeah, I guess you'd be the one getting it. Yeah. So, Layne, I really don't know anything about you other than what I found out recently. You're an interventionist.
You've been to prison.
You have been to prison.
You're married.
You don't look good without a beard.
Yep.
Let's kind of take it back to like your recovery experience, because you were in recovery before prison, right?
Yeah.
So what was that like? Like, what led you to even get into recovery in the first place, and what did that journey look like?
So it's a long journey. I first got sober. Well, let's go back before that. I first attempted sobriety in my teenage years when I was 15, 16. And my journey into recovery was as progressive as my journey into addiction. And what I mean by that is, every time consequences started small, right? As they do with everybody. And, the first consequence, resulted in like, all right, you need to go to meetings, because I was like 15, and My parents that was kind of the tools that they had, that they knew of, to go to a meeting. So my dad would take me to meetings, and I would go to the old Club 101 when it was on Guadalupe.
Mm-hmm. Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yep, I knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was old 101. And I would leave in the middle of the meeting and go get high, and then go back in. And it was like that was my introduction into what recovery was like, oh, this is cool.
Was that like to duck your parents?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was just to appease them and do whatever they wanted me to do. And then later in high school, got into some more trouble. Just the regular stuff that everybody in addiction goes through. And then went into like an IOP program. Then eventually got arrested for DUI right after high school. And that's when I decided myself that I needed to go to treatment. So I went to Starlight when I was 18 years old down there in Center Point. And did not really have any intention of being sober, of staying sober. It was more of like I didn't really have a whole lot going for me at 18, and wasn't going to, or I did try to go to college. I did try to go to ACC. Didn't really work out. And so I went to treatment, and there I had a counselor who, kind of started spinning things for me in a different way, kind of, giving the steps and giving my relation to the steps some verbiage that actually made sense to me. So I wasn't an angry kid. I wasn't very, so I thought, resentful at the world. And when I was going through my 4-step, I came to her and I said, look, this doesn't really apply to me. Right. I don't really know how to talk about if because I'm not angry at dad. I'm not angry at mom. I'm not angry at, the school for whatever. She said, well, are you hurt? Are you sad? Are you feeling anything again? And I was like, yeah. She said, okay, well, resentment comes from the word resentore, which means to re-feel. So if you're re-feeling anything, that's what you write about in your 4-step. And it just blew my mind. And so I was like, okay, holy shit, maybe I am all of this stuff that I'm learning about. Maybe I am all of this. But I still didn't want to go to sober living. And so diving into recovery still didn't seem like, what I really wanted to do at that point. And they wore me down to the point where I said, okay, I'll go to sober living for 3 months. That was like the commitment at the time. It's 3-month commitment.
And just to put it in perspective, how old are you now?
35.
Okay. So this
was 17 years ago.
17 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a long time ago. And this was in 2007.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. So I don't know. I
So
can't do the
you
math.
commit to 3 months of sober living?
3 months of sober living in Kerrville, Texas. Okay. And I'm originally from Austin, and I was like, I'm gonna go back to Austin and live it up, and so they wore me down. And sent me to Kerrville. I ended up staying in Kerrville for 3 years. I stayed in Kerrville for 3 years for a couple reasons. One was I found my tribe. Like I found the people that I could relate with. I found, a family. I could walk into any group, any meeting, and just kind of feel at home and be able to talk about things in a real way that I had never been able to before. And at that age of 18, that's really all anybody's looking for, is like that family, that group, that feeling of belonging. Now, stayed in Kerrville for 3 years, then moved back to Austin, and I don't even know what year. It all kind of the blur, but moved back to Austin after 3 years and kind of just started doing the same thing here. Was working in treatment. Started working in treatment right after I got sober as a tech, and then kind of moved up into some different managerial roles. But moved to Austin, started working in a couple of different treatment centers, going to meetings, doing everything. And kind of the theme through that was a 5.5 year stint of sobriety. Through that whole period was this kind of, my world revolved around the 12 steps. It revolved around meetings. It revolved around recovery. There was literally nothing else. There was not a whole lot of family stuff, not a whole lot of career aspirations, not a whole lot of hobbies really. And I was taught that, you have to be happy, joyous, and free all the time. You have to be sponsoring all these people. You have to be going to meetings all the time. You have to have a home group. You have to have a service commitment. You have to do all these different things. And, I checked all the boxes. And at 5.5 years, I drank. I relapsed and didn't really know why or how or what the reason was. Because, every time somebody relapses, the question is, well, what happened? Right. It's like, well, I'm an addict and I'm an alcoholic. So I don't really have an answer for what happened other than I would always tell people I did it the right way, though. I had lunch with my dad. I told him that I was going to drink. I talked to one of my sponsees, told him I was going to drink. And I talked to my sponsor, said, I'm going to drink. So I did it the right. I told everybody beforehand. So I was good. I was covering all my bases.
Yeah.
And
gracefully exiting.
Yeah. Gracefully exiting the program.
Respectable.
And,
respectable.
Yeah. I thought, I need to be a gentleman about this.
Yeah.
And anyway, so the relapse was, a couple years with another treatment episode down in South Padre. Found Adderall, found IV methamphetamine use. Before that, it was just, whiskey and Xanax and cocaine. And then when I was 24, 25, during the relapse, was introduced to IV methamphetamine use. And that's really what took me down quicker than anything else. I think I was using for 9 months before I ended up in prison. Not very long at all. And Kerrville's a really bad place for meth because that's where I ended up back in Kerrville. Yeah. Because I was like, it's comfortable. I know Kerrville. I know all the sober livings in Kerrville. It's I know all the meetings. It's small. I feel like I can just kind of jump right back into it.
Like if it got too bad.
Well, no, like after one of the treatment episode in South Padre, I decided to go to
landed in Kerrville.
Go to Kerrville for sober living. Because I knew one of the sober living owners who would kind of give me a pass and waive the, fee or whatever to move in. And just, went off the rails. But being in prison is kind of where like the crux of the story is, because the whole time sober and in recovery from 18 up to, 24, I was taught you needed all these things. You needed this whole toolbox. You needed all this stuff to stay sober, to be successful in recovery. And then I found myself in prison. And the reason I stayed in there and I didn't get on probation was because, again, I was like, I'm not going to be sober. I'm not going to do this. I don't want to take 5 years of probation and then, fuck up
and then go back.
And end up back there. I was like, just let me serve my time and, get out, off paper. And
can I ask what you went to prison for?
Yeah, so it was during the relapse. I was homeless at one point, living out of my car. And one thing that I can laugh about it now. One thing I would do is I would befriend people like on an everyday basis, and I never kept friends for more than a day.
Every day.
Every day I would meet somebody new. And I'd get my hands on their credit card, and I would use their credit card and then one time I had to get my brakes fixed on my car. I shattered my windshield, had to get that fixed, and just food and gas and stuff, just trying to survive. And that caught up, one of those times caught up with me. And so I had a warrant out for my arrest for credit card abuse.
Okay.
And then the reason I got picked up again in Kerrville was, we got pulled over and we had stuff on us, and then I had that warrant also, so I got two charges there.
Makes sense.
How long did you spend in prison?
Just a year.
Just a year,
but it was 5 years probation or 1 year of TDC, and so when I went to court and they told me, said you can do this, you can do this, and I said, well, I don't know if I'm gonna be sober, that whole thing. And so I took the year in prison, and I'm so grateful that I did, because it allowed me this time to, I had this moment of clarity when I was in Hayes County, got extradited to Hayes County in San Marcos.
Ooh, okay.
And it was in that pod where I kind of just had this moment of clarity. I was reading I was getting into like some Buddhism stuff. So I was reading this Thich Nhat Hanh book.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of hit me. I was like, I have to do this. I have to be sober. Like, this is what my life will look like if I'm not. And so it was just from that point on, I caught chain down to TDC in Bartlett, just north of Georgetown. And there I was like, okay, I'm going to write AA World Services because I don't have a big book. So I wrote them. It was really cool. It's like this, you hear about this kind of stuff. Like, you can write them a letter in jail and they'll send it. You think they're just stories, but then you do it and they send you like a whole package of a book, these pamphlets, like all this stuff. It was really cool. It kind of felt like I was really kind of in touch with that old school AA world.
Right. Back when all they had was letters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, you know, back in, you know, it's kind of this dichotomy that I feel where, you know, I operate today under this kind of new way of thinking. I don't even know if it's a new way of thinking, but it's not a dogmatic way of thinking. It's not that you need to be in this category. You know, like we've talked about, you know, the recovery box before. And in that 5.5 years sober before, I was in that recovery box. That's what I thought I needed. But now I'm in prison and all I got's an AA book. And my dorm in prison was at the very end of the block. And so on Thursday nights, they would have an AA meeting. They would go from the first block all the way to the last, collecting people for the meeting. By the time they got to me, there weren't any more spots left.
Shit.
So I couldn't even go to a meeting. So I had one person, this guy, Troy Caperton, who I used to work with, who he would correspond with me. And he was in the program. And
Pretty
so
sure
he
I know
was,
Troy.
yeah, you probably do. He's an old
Older
guy.
gentleman?
Yeah, old
Yeah.
guy, been around for a while.
He's cool.
He's really cool. He would send me books and stuff. And, but I would write with him. And actually, that's how my wife and I got to know each other. She would write me too. And so I had two connections to the outside world, the recovery world. And I was in a dorm with like 54 other guys, and not a single one of them were on the recovery path.
Right.
And so being in prison, I really had to grapple with this idea of needing recovery, needing sobriety. K2 and weed and stuff was all around me in there, and not having any of the tools that I was taught that I needed to have. And so it's kind of this space of having to really come up with my own recovery, really come up with my own program, kind of figure out how am I going to do this in here without a meeting, without a sponsor, without somebody to walk me through this stuff. And I, you know, mechanically, I knew how to do all of it because I've been doing it for years. But trying to remain, you know, an empty vessel, you know, as we try to do, it was kind of difficult because I didn't have anybody there to fill it up.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, a lot of, you know, I have, you know, clients that, because I'm a recovery coach and mental health coach as well as an interventionist. And so I have people that ask me, you know, well, how did you do that? How did you stay sober? And, you know, being taught that you need to do all these things. And really it's like, I dove into everything else in my life, my very small world in there. I dove in like head first with everything, working out, trying to eat right, like trying to create relationships with people, even though they were, you know, nobody wanted to be sober. It was like, I needed to like connect with people. I needed to, you know, really look outside of this recovery box and look at all the other things I was missing and try to focus on those and do everything to the best of my ability, not half-ass anything.
Can you elaborate what you mean on like the recovery box?
So the recovery box,
because it almost seems like it has a negative connotation to it.
So in my view, in my experience, when I talk about the recovery box, it is kind of a negative thing. It's, you know, being restricted to this stuff. You can do these things and this is what you need to do to be sober. Whereas, you know, I've had sponsors where our inventory looks totally different. Our meditation looks totally different. You know, I have clients where, you know, they hate working out and it puts them in a really bad place, but this other activity works really, really well for them. And so it's really finding what works for you and not relying totally on what other people are telling you to do. Because, again, recovery is full of dichotomies, right? There's this idea of, my best thinking got me where I am. But then there's this, on the other hand, I'm sober now and I can take the power back in my life and choose what I want to do. And so it's like, well, what do you go with,
right.
And what's the right time to do each one? And so breaking out of the recovery box is really empowering yourself and empowering other people to choose what is going to work best for them. And a lot of treatment centers are kind of jumping onto this as far as, the choosing your own recovery pathway, SMART recovery, Dharma, 12 steps, whatever you choose to do. And then they'll support you going through that. And there's a lot of other places that don't do that, and they're fine. They all serve their purpose. And some people need, the 12-step immersion kind of place. That's just not what worked for me. Right. And it worked for me in the very beginning.
Yeah, not the only thing that worked for you.
Right. It's not the only thing that worked for me. And, the 12 steps are amazing, and I still practice them every single day. But even Bill Wilson called the 12 steps a spiritual kindergarten. Yeah. He said, this is a good place to start. Yeah. This is not the end all be all. And a lot of what I do in my work is, with the interventions, it's more like, triage and just keeping people from dying.
Sure.
And getting them to a place where then they can explore, what do you want your life to look like? Because with the coaching, it's like, I'm just the coach. You're the driver. Yeah. You get to figure out what your life's going to look like. You get to set these goals. You want to go to Berkeley for music? Let's fucking do it. Yeah. Like figure out how to get there. And really empowering people to not feel like they have to do, or they're limited to, what somebody else is telling them, what their parents are telling them, what their wife or husband are telling them. And really just taking back the power in their own life. There's a meditation that one of my sponsors taught me long time ago. His name is Robert Part. And it's called a recapitulation meditation. It's super simple. It's like a very simple, like trauma meditation where it's almost like EMDR that you can like do by yourself, where you kind of envision a moment in your life where you gave somebody else power, where you gave somebody else like rent free in your head. And you go back and you smell the things, you see the things, you really live that moment in this meditation. And then you do these movements with your head and your breath where you're taking back the power in your life. And that's kind of in essence, like what I believe makes my recovery so different today is that, I don't really go to meetings anymore. My recovery is based on my trauma work today. That might change in the future.
Right.
It's focused on codependency. It's focused on trauma. And I actually listened to one of y'all's other podcasts about trauma. And
with Meredith?
Yeah. And I love Meredith. And
oh yeah, she's great. She's great.
And,
that's our aunt, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. She was never either of our counselors in treatment, but she was. I was in her room more than anybody else's.
I wasn't anywhere, dude. I wasn't that active in rehab.
Yeah. How do you navigate that path though, like of empowering somebody to choose that course for them? Because that to me seems very new, right? And all I've been taught was kind of like the recovery box that you mentioned, like do this, check these boxes and you'll be okay. Yet I found myself not okay. And I know that's not everybody's experience.
Right.
But how do you navigate that from early on, from interventionist or from being intervened on to like the process? Maybe they go to treatment. Like when do you start developing that path for them to help them choose?
So when I do an intervention, like I said, it's all right. Let's have you not die first right. and then we'll go into all the other stuff. And so at the end of every intervention, the families that I work with, they're always so scared. Oh, he's going to hate me. He's going to hate you. And I was like, no, every intervention I've ever had, we end with a hug. I drive them to treatment. We're hugging, we're laughing. And it's all about connections. Like I was saying, when I was locked up, I focused on connecting with people. It's all about connections, and it's all about, getting on somebody's level. You know, I specialize in mental health, schizoaffective and schizophrenia, doing those kinds of interventions and that recovery pathway. And it's really just getting on the level with people because they've been told for so long that they're different, that they're messed up, there's something wrong with them. And what we hear and what we tell ourselves, I mean, becomes our reality, right? And so if you have somebody in your corner that is not saying that and saying the opposite of that and telling you that you're okay, that you can do whatever you want, you know, you follow these few simple rules, doors open up for you. You know, everything is going to open up. The world's going to open up for you. And you get to experience freedom. You know, I mentioned happy, joyous, and free in the very beginning. There's a story I always talk about when I got sober. I got sober in 2007, and that was when MySpace was still around.
Love
it.
Never had it.
I did have one.
You never had it?
I was convinced Tom was my dad.
Tom. Yeah.
Tom was my dad. That's what my mom told me.
MySpace, for those of you who don't know,
I know what it is. Okay, we just never had one. Okay.
When you update your status when you updated your status on MySpace, there was a little drop down thing that you put how you feel.
Yeah.
And I was so scared to put how I felt on there because in recovery, if you're sad, did you pray about it?
Yeah.
If you're angry, you need to go help somebody. You know, you're not allowed to just be in your feelings, right? Like, I mean, that's what I was taught. And, you know, you're not allowed to, there's a fear of judgment if you are sitting in anger and leaning into the sadness or leaning into the shame and really looking at that stuff rather than going out and just like helping somebody. You know, you need to go sponsor somebody. Don't feel sad. Go do this. And, you know, so I was so afraid and when I first got sober to actually share how I was feeling. And then, you know, today, you know, really leaning into that kind of stuff, helping clients and people around me identify emotions. Like that's the first thing. It's like, how are you feeling? Not good. Like what do you feel? Where is it in your body? Is it in your belly? Is it in your shoulders? Is it in your hands? What color is it? What shape does it take? You know, like really looking at that kind of stuff and sitting with those emotions, that in itself is empowering. That in itself can get somebody to say, wow, okay, I'm a real person. Like I can actually feel this stuff, you know, and I'm not trying to feel something that I don't because I'm told that that's what I need to do. Or I'm told that that's what I am or whatever. And so that's like the first step on this path that you're talking about is just getting them to empower themselves in their own feelings and their own bodies. And then it's simple questions. What do you want to do? Like, what do you want your life to look like a month from now? All right, you just want to be alive a month from now? Okay, these are the things that we can do to keep you alive a month from now. You want to have a career 5 years from now? All right, well, cool. Let's look at these things. Let's line it all out. Like we just roadmap everything. And giving the person the opportunity to just talk about what they want to do is what a lot of people haven't ever gotten. It's just that opportunity. Oh, I get to choose what I get to do. I had a therapist in Kerrville who said something very simple to me that was so profound at the time. And I've carried it with me ever since. And I didn't see her for very long. I don't know why, but she told me, she said, you are sober now. You get to choose what your life looks like. I was like, holy shit, I do?
Yeah.
And that just like, that took me aback. And it really made me look at things because I've been living in a sober house, then got a apartment in Kerrville and, you know, moved back to Austin and was just kind of living this recovery life. It wasn't what I really wanted it to look like.
So what do you think it is? Because when I hear, and you've heard it, when people exit recovery, and whether they're getting high or not, they're staying sober, whatever it may be, and they refuse to return back to the rooms, or it's just not a thought, it's never really the process. Right? Like the 12 steps themselves are fantastic tools in its essence. What I've seen is that people don't want to return to the rooms, whether they're sober or they're getting high, and they probably should, but they don't. And it's never because of the 12 steps themselves. Right?
Yeah.
It's because of the representatives of the 12 steps, the people who are in recovery, who are saying these things. So where do you think the problem is for people who are in the rooms helping these people out? Like, what do you think needs to start shifting to open these doors that you've seen has been more than just the one door of 12 steps?
Yeah.
Where we can start letting people in and not feeling like they're boxed into that recovery box.
I mean, there's this question of like exclusivity that, you know, especially, and I'm really grateful for my experience and having time and then relapsing and coming back, because I've seen it from all sides. You know, after having been shooting dope and then, you know, people dragging me to a meeting, like there was a few people that took me to this meeting, and I remember sitting in the middle of that room, just my head down, and everybody knew what I was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a small community. Everybody knew what was going on. Nobody came up to talk to me. Nobody did. And I just sat there crying, and then I left. I got high. And so, and I know that that's not everybody's experience, and that's not every meeting. And I don't want it to seem like that's what I'm saying, but in my experience, and then, you know, I'll be quite honest, you know, I have partaken in it as well. When somebody else relapses and we don't just circle the wagons around them, we don't ask them, you know, if you think somebody might not be doing well, how often does everybody call that person to just ask them how they're doing? We'd rather talk about it with our buddies over here, about how John Doe over here, man, you see, you kind of looked fucked up the other day. Yeah. Oh yeah, man, I noticed that too. Rarely do we call John Doe, but hey, dude, you kind of look fucked up. Like, are you okay? You know, I care about you. I want you to know I'm still here if you need anything. And I think that really having, you know, the other thing with what I do is, you know, I deal with a lot of relapse with people, and people think that it's this huge catastrophe and things are over, and it's really not. It's all part of this journey. It's all, you know, it's a non-linear pathway, you know, and everything can kind of come to a head, and everything can kind of subside, and you know, everything can be, I don't know what I'm saying. It's this idea that like you're okay and you don't have to be a certain way to still be a part of this.
Be part of this as in
the life, you know, like our circle, the meeting, the group, whatever it is that you feel like you need to be, or that they feel like they need to be a part of, or that they want to be a part of. Like we did a podcast, you know, the other week where we were talking about Austin Tap, and this is just kind of like a little metaphor, I guess. And they were asking, like, you know, who can come and be a part of it. And somebody said, you know, if you have a purpose, you can come over. And I was like, even if you don't have a purpose, just come sit down with us, come sit next to us, and just come experience what it's like to be here. And that's all it really is just to include people in a way that is not identified with what you're trying to do. It's kind of the attraction rather than promotion. You know, we talk about that a lot, but you know, very rarely do we go out and try to not promote, but we see somebody suffering and you go ask how they're doing. Just reach out to them. I don't know if that answers any kind of question that you had, but
yeah, I mean, well, something that you said was like when people aren't really calling them, you know, whenever, if they haven't seen them in a while or their head was down, no one went up to them after me. I feel like there's still like the pillars, because when you think about some of the heavy hitters in the 12-step community, like those people are calling people, you know, like those people are reaching out. Those people are going up to the person after the meeting. And it seems like, but what's attached to that is just simply what worked for them. And so in my eyes, because I went to therapy, once I got into therapy, I was like, damn, maybe I don't need to ride a nightly and I won't die, you know? Yeah. And not that like nightlies aren't helpful, inventory is not helpful, because they absolutely are. And they've allowed me to have an experience that was just different than the one I was experiencing.
But you were operating under this fear of like, I'm going to fucking die if I don't
I was
do this.
operating under the fear that if I don't go to meetings, I'm going to die. I was operating under the fear that if I do 5 nightlies a week instead of 7, like my sponsor is going to chew me out. I want to be like my sponsor who seems so happy, joyous, and free, you know, which he has his own shit that he's dealing with that, you know, is, I guess if you know, you know. Mm-hmm. But it seems like it needs to be more of a team effort as far as a pathway is concerned, rather than like, hey, if you're going to be here, this is how you got to do it.
Yeah. And I also think that there's a level of transparency that needs to increase, you know, like, and it's exacerbated by this whole social, you know, the social media world that we live in, where you put your best foot forward and that's all you see. Cause I mean, you know, you and I have been friends on Facebook for a long time, and you see all the good stuff from my life, and I see all the good stuff from your life, but you don't see any of the stuff behind closed doors.
Yeah.
I don't see any of your shit.
Yeah.
And so we get this idea of like, well, this is what recovery is. You know, this is what it needs to look like. And it's very toxic, because then once we get into myself, if I get into this place of like, oh, I'm really struggling, or, you know, my wife and I are really going through something, or I'm having like, you know, I'm a father, and like, man, I shouldn't be, you know, frustrated with my kids or whatever, all these negative things, which are really all normal things. But I compare it to what other people in recovery, what their life looks like. And they don't seem to have any problems with their life. They don't seem to have any problems with their career or anything like that. They're not struggling.
Get divorced. And then they get divorced.
Well, yeah.
Like,
but then it's like, you know, just, you know, and I know that people one-on-one have these conversations, but if we make it more of a public conversation, more of an open dialogue with the community, I mean, I feel like we could save lives just by doing something as simple as that, like small tweak.
So how do you make it public? Like in a private room, how do you make that public?
I mean, I think it just takes a couple brave people,
Yeah.
you know, to just kind of start to shift around kind of the dialogue, and you know, because I see some people do it, and I haven't done it, so like I'm just as guilty of what I'm talking about as anybody else, and it's, you know, how do you do it? I don't know. You just do it. You just talk about it.
Yeah.
You know?
I would even argue that like just by like putting it out there, that like say you picked up like a whatever your chip, you know, like I would say it's still like putting your shit out there. Like you're admitting that you've been through some stuff, that you've done some things, you've had some really bad experiences, but like you got out of it.
Yeah.
And I do also agree that like there is this like negative, like I was at my home group the other day, and like, you know, we're going over like Bill's story, and somebody, you know, was like, hey, you know, we didn't, you know, hear Bill talk about getting touched as a kid or whatever. And as soon as I heard it, I was like, oh, shut up, dude. I was like, maybe Bill didn't get touched as a fucking kid. That's why, you know, he didn't write about it in his fucking story. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, you know, because I do agree to a certain extent, there are people out there that really shun people for like having had traumatic experiences in their lives. And then we just tell those people that, you know, AA is going to fix all of that.
Yeah.
And like in my experience, AA just didn't fix all of that. And I didn't realize that AA hadn't fixed all that till I started doing therapy at like the demand of my sponsor, you know, because he was like, I am a dude that's not educated to help you.
Oh, we haven't even touched on the man box,
you know? Yeah. And so like, you know, he put me in touch with a therapist. And then once I started working with her, I was like, oh my God, you know, like I've been sober I told her, I was like, I've been sober 8 years. You know, I've worked on this so much, but I didn't work on it at all in the same sense. And like just hearing it from like my sponsor, somebody I respect, somebody I admire, letting me know that it's okay to have issues that AA might not be qualified to help me with, like really helped reassure me that I'm not this broken individual, you know, or that, you know, AA, because even the big book says it, right? Like we do not have a monopoly on God, right? And I believe that implies that AA also doesn't have a monopoly on how you're going to get the most amount of help, you know, or have the best experience possible. Because if at the end of the day, it's like, and I've been all over the place throughout the years, you know, I've been super gung-ho, AA, you're going to die, motherfucker, you know, NA is not worth a damn, you know. But I've also been like, if you're happy and you're alive and you're doing well, then who gives a shit what it is that you're up to, you know. But that took a few years, and you know everything we talked about is absolutely right. Like that's not talked about more, that like your journey can look a little bit different, and that's A-okay. Because I haven't written nightly in God knows how long, you know? But I also don't feel like I ever rode it nightly because I was afraid of getting high again. I don't fucking feel like riding it, you know? Which, you know, Tyler can testify. I typically don't do anything if I don't feel like doing it.
He doesn't even hang out with me, dude. If it's not convenient to him, he don't hang out with me. You know,
I live in my world, dude.
But there's such a stereotype to people in recovery, because there was a post in the Facebook group where that was like, what step are you on or something like that, and I was like, man, I haven't worked a step in 3 months, and someone like wow reacted it, you know. And if I was maybe more insecure about because like my life is fucking great, like you know, I don't wake up wondering how I'm feeling the majority of my days now, which every day in recovery I was like, I need to get with God first thing, and I'm not okay until I do. Then I get into meditation and I'm like, am I close to God? And I'm wondering the whole day if I'm okay, you know. And so there's like this stereotype of or maybe not even a stereotype, but it's just so foreign. Once you're in it, it's just kind of where you're expected to stay, which that's what I thought as well, because it did save my life. It did take me to a place where I could grow up, you know, have a career, own a business, gain confidence, you know, all of these things, mature and grow into myself. So it's like, what is it like stepping out of that? And when people see that someone else is stepping out of it and maybe exploring another path or not, it's so foreign, because they're thinking, I think when you get into recovery, you're almost wondering when you're going to get out of it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so seeing people step away from this life raft that it was, is like, whoa, what are you doing? And oh my God, am I an addict or not? You know, like, should I be doing that too? Should I expect that? Because all we see is this expectation of the hard hitters that have stayed, and they read the book every day and they tell you what it is, and that, you know. And so seeing that is so foreign, but it seems like it's a necessity, because the success rates, I'm sure you've seen it, are down here. Yeah. You know, and in my head, I'm like, well, only if they did it right, you know, only if they did it correctly, then they'd have the same experience as me.
Well, yeah, I mean, even look at the success rates, and as an anonymous program, the only way that they get statistics like that are chip purchases from World Services. That's the only way that you can get statistics, right? And so if people like me, I haven't picked up I'm going to pick up an annual chip this year, but I haven't picked one up the last couple of years. Yeah. So my number's fallen off. It's just disappeared. Right. Yeah. But I'm still doing okay. Yeah. But you guys have both mentioned something. Well, now that I'm in therapy, or, you know, because I'm in therapy, you know, I learned this or whatever, like you're on this new pathway, and there's this community that I'm a part of today. It's this trauma healing community. And there's something that we talk about in there all the time. And I think we touched on this in one of the questions in the Facebook group. So in 12 steps and 12-step recovery, we get through the steps. The last step is to go help other people carry this message. And so we recover, we get our central nervous system, our parasympathetic nervous system back on track. We get regulated again. We're not going to die now, but then we immediately go out and try to help other people solve all those problems. We miss the middle part. There's recover, heal, and then launch. We go from recover to launch, launching out into the world to save the world, right? We miss that healing part, which it sounds like that's kind of what the phase that we're all three in now, is healing from these traumas, healing from this childhood stuff that literally dictates the way I interact with the world today. You know, everything I do is, you know, coming over here to do this podcast, feeling nervous, feeling butterflies, like why? I'm just coming to talk with some dudes, but something happened in my past where I have this wound that it's being poked at by what we're doing right now. It's like literally everything I do, you know, is affected by something from my past. And so I have to heal from all that stuff before I can really effectively go out and like save other people or go really work with other people in a way that really matters. Now, I'm not saying don't sponsor people. I'm not saying don't make coffee, don't be the greeter at the meeting, because those things are all amazing. It should be done from day one. Yeah. But this idea that we can skip that middle part about healing for ourselves, like that's another thing that we don't really talk about. Like you said, you know, 12 steps, you know, be quick to see where doctors are right. Be quick to see where religious people are right or whatever. You know, be quick to see where all these other modalities of healing are correct and
Right,
can be
ineffective.
for you. And I mean, there's so much out there that, you know, we just don't talk about very much. And, you know, the 12 steps can't really help with, you know, the 12 steps can't really help with the messages that I got as a child, you know. And you know, I told you I was listening to the podcast with Meredith, and it got me thinking about a lot of this stuff. And you know, it's really cool to think about. It's really cool to talk with people who are of the same thought, you know.
Yeah. Well, you know, it was surprisingly enough, it's been harder to sponsor people. Like, I don't know if you've had that experience. It might just be me.
What do you mean?
It's been because my dialogue has changed. You know, it was real like big God stuff. And I used to have a massive experience with God, who I called Chief for no reason. And I had a sponsor named Michael Haynes at one point, and Michael Haynes was all about, you don't need anything but God, and, you know, you'll find God anywhere you're at. And it was true. And I had a really cool experience. And after that, and I wasn't as embedded in this God concept as I felt like I lost it, you know, but I found out I was okay. And so now when I sponsor people, I got one sponsee who needs a lot of help, you know, but it's such a different vibe. He doesn't know that. I know that. And I can recite this stuff. I put down my 10,000 hours, you know, I'm educated here, but it's different. You know, the intensity is different. You know, how I'm relaxed whenever I talk to him about this stuff, and just seeing if he can understand it and just grasp it for the sake of him knowing what he's getting into, rather than knowing what happens if you don't.
Do you feel like it's a struggle for you to communicate or for him to understand?
Respectively both.
Yeah.
Yeah, respect, because he's young. He's 21. He doesn't come from a good place from Oklahoma. He's not that educated. You know, he comes from the street life, right? Like all of this, he's never even tried to comprehend before, and it's really, really confusing for him. You know, it was real like, be a man, stick up for your own. And so like none of this talking about feelings. So he doesn't understand the point of the 4-step. Well, and actually, there was a point where he was like, this all just seems like my fault. Why am I writing about other people? I'm like, you're right, dude.
You got it.
You're exactly right. But it's also on me, like my own experience sitting down in front of this person, not saying that this process is wrong or ineffective, but just the passion that I had before is not there anymore. So I'm almost like a teacher teaching a fucking 8th grader how to do algebra. Like, here is the mechanics of it. Here's the purpose of it. Here's how to solve your problems. But I'm not God concept driven like I was taught to be. And I've just noticed that it's been a completely different experience with this guy.
That's so interesting and equally cool to hear you talk about just that paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And I think that what I've found through my, you know, I guess you call it evolution of, you know, recovery and healing. I don't even want to call it like recovery. Like, this is just like a big healing process. You know, is that it, for me, you know, I think it becomes more effective because, like you said, you're more relaxed talking about it. It's more sustainable, really, you know, because you're not burning off all your energy, being all fired up all the time, which is great if you're fired up, because I get fired up still sometimes about recovery. I mean, I used to do like 10th step workshops and stuff where I would just talk about freedom all the time. And I could still get really worked up about that kind of stuff, especially when I'm talking to people like new families who don't understand. And, you know, we're in the first phase of the intervention, which is education. And we're going through all that. Like I got to reel it back in sometimes because I get really excited, but in the long run, it becomes much more effective and much more sustainable with being able to educate. Because you're right. You are a teacher. Like, we're educators now. Like, that's what we get to do, is go out in a more effective and deeper way into the community, into the world, and to educate people. Because like, we can spend all day in the rooms with the people who, like, you already know about all this stuff. But even before we started, we were talking about, you know, y'all's mission with the podcast and with the group and everything. And, you know, kind of, in essence, trying to facilitate a culture shift. And it's like, we don't need to do the culture shift within our own ranks. Like, we need to go out there in the world and educate people on what this can really be about. And it's funny that I always think about like Hollywood, like, because my wife's in recovery too, and we'll watch like you know, Shameless or that new show Louder Milk, and like all these horrible depictions of what recovery and 12-step look like.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the problem. That's one of the problems. Like that's the problem with, because then you'll go talk to normies or whoever, and then that's the idea they have of what recovery is and what it looks like. And so then it becomes this scary thing because it's bad, it's negative. Where in reality, it's like, no, like we're all really, really cool people and don't think about getting high ever, really. We're just kind of, now we're on this path of like, dealing with my childhood shit and like figuring out all this other stuff and, whatever. But yeah, it's cool to be on an evolutionary path and not this linear thing that's just, in 25 years, I'm just going to be sitting in a meeting and spouting off about the big book still. It's,
Well, and I know like these heavy hitters who used to sponsor me, they, I only read the big book, never picked up another book. And even them though, they're like, hey, you should check out this other book that's all about Taoism, right? Like, so I'm seeing it kind of open up just a little bit, but I've heard it always about, if you want to go try something else, that's perfectly fine. But you got like squinted eyes. Yeah. Oh, you mean that? Because like, you tell me this, but then there's this, and
it's not encouraged.
It's not encouraged.
It's allowed,
yeah,
but not encouraged.
But at the same time, it's like, I know they would support somebody going and doing that. That's just where it ends for them.
They got to be afraid though, Like if you're going to, like if what saved their life and what has continued to save their life, and you've been doing it for, you're just my reference. You've been doing it for 9 years, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to go try something entirely different. Yeah. It's like, that has to be scary for that person because they care about you, right? Yeah. And they want you to continue doing what they know works for them. And that has, I guess, historically worked for the other individual as well, But back to, like, I have not had the same experience with sponsoring people, I guess, as you have. Like I still got my home group, still got my service commitment, still, very active, like within my community as well as in therapy, really big in my morning disciplines and stuff and prayers and meditation and things. And I felt like everything has contributed to my effectiveness with the individual and hasn't necessarily taken away from my passion for the literature, because the literature in essence is absolutely what saved my life, what allowed me to be open to a better way of living. Because I probably would have been closed-minded to therapy my entire life if it hadn't been for AA. And so just like, I guess for me, it's a lot more. And I said this earlier, is like I don't feel like I've ever worked a program of AA because I was afraid I was gonna die, or I was afraid I was gonna get high again. Like I just got pulled with a vision of hope that was like, your life can get so much better, because my life got a lot better, and I was like, I want my life to be fucking better, and just kind of working it for that. And because I've just never been like, I'm afraid, if I missed a nightly, I wasn't like nervous about getting high. If I didn't want to go to the meeting, I didn't go. I wasn't nervous about getting drunk or whatever the hell, or if I didn't always have 97 sponsees,
And I was, because they told me I needed to do that to stay close to God. Yeah. And that if I wasn't connected to God, then I'm living in self. And if I'm living in self, I'm going to go get high. Yeah. That was my experience. And that's why I truly believe that even today, my apprehension towards trying to like understand and be close to this God thing is there. Nowadays, John said this, I think in our last interview right before you, he was like, it's a lot easier to keep it simple with that whole God concept shit for him nowadays. And it's like, yeah, that's where I ended up. And it's a lot easier now because there's just a lack of pressure to try and understand, feel, connect, and live by it, when I assumed that if I wasn't up, and that was the first thing I did before I ever got any coffee, that if I didn't do that, I'm on a bad path. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And I think back to what you were saying, that's been my shift also, is like not. So I ever since I've worked in treatment and doing what I do, I've always related working with clients as like working with my kids. Like you're never going to get very far with making things negative or punitive, like you're gonna die, or not with the kids, but in recovery you're gonna die. Like you're not gonna get, with my kids, it's you're not, you get this consequence, negative consequence if you do or don't do this. It doesn't work. It's being pulled with the vision, it's being pulled with this hope and this idea that, and that's how, in everything that I do from my personal to my professional life, it's all about trying to remain positive and trying to have these, like in the intervention letters that I have families write, in that whole process, we don't focus on negative consequences. We focus on positive consequences. Like what, these are all the wonderful things that are going to happen if you choose to go to treatment today. This is the way I'll continue to support you.
Makes sense.
Right. And yeah, it's being, having that hope for the future, and having that pull, and that now I'm just trying to think of synonyms for that, but yeah, that having that excitement for what's to come rather than the fear of what might happen. That's I agree. That's been my shift.
On that note, so I work over at ALR, and I put into place this new like kind of incentive thing, because I don't know, the house wasn't clean like I wanted it to be, and I feel like I was always like taking privileges away, and it wasn't getting better. And so I did this deal where it's like, if your room got the least amount of tallies, I'll take you out to lunch on Friday. And oh my God, the cleanliness of the whole house. And I would also say the camaraderie, because they kind of, and it's been going for a couple months now, like they've been like very active with like, hey man, we got to hold each other accountable, we got to make that bed right, we got to do this, we got to do that. And like really just been a lot more, because they've really taken a liking to just it being a more of an incentive, like, hey, you do something good, I'll take you. Like yesterday we went and ate Costco pizza. It's great.
Costco does have good pizza.
It's great pizza for $10 for 18 inches.
Oh wow.
Amen.
Positive.
But yeah. But yeah, positive reinforcement rather than like, I'm gonna take away your TV on Friday. Like just in my experience has helped a lot more. But in the same token as just being positive instead of like, you're gonna die. Yeah,
it's just how people operate. That's just how people are. And like, but we get so frustrated in whatever it is that you just want to shake them and say, this is what needs to happen, or this bad thing will happen. Because that's what's going on as helpers and educators. Like we're, have, at least for myself, you naturally have that stoic mindset of like, well, the worst thing that could happen if this doesn't happen. But the person that's receiving the help or receiving the education, they don't really care about that. They want to see the good, and they want to see the positive that comes out of it.
Yeah, well, it's funny too, because I feel like everyone else will see the change before you do. And like one time my fiance and I were in a meeting, and she was like breaking down while someone was sharing, because she was like hearing them say the same thing. And she's like, everyone just says this stuff and then they go get high. What the fuck is going on here? And she was like, I'm worried you're going to leave me if I step out of like this 12-step stuff. And, she was like, would I be okay? Would I be this? Would I be that? And I was like, I haven't called my sponsor in 6 months. Like what other decision is there to make to be on a different path that's beneficial when you can just acknowledge that you've already been on that path, and that's where I found myself 8.5 years into recovery, and my fiance 3.5 something years into recovery. You're already doing it. Yeah. Like John said earlier, people are shocked that I'm doing something different and make the exit, and they're rightfully fearful because of how deadly the disease is. But what they don't see is that 3 years before I made that decision, I started my therapy process.
Right.
And so it wasn't making a decision to exit. It was more so acknowledging that I've already not been doing it, but I'm still living the quality of life that I want to live. If someone wants to live a shitty quality of life, okay. Yeah. Let's talk about that, but I'm content. I'm more content than I've ever been. And the pressure was off. Yeah. I keep talking about that, but that's really like the pressure was off of me. It feels really good.
Yeah, I definitely get that pressure. And, my wife and I talk about it all the time too, about, because I'm in it every day. I work in it. I'm working with clients. I'm working with families. Have to do with all the marketing shit, which I hate. You know, I got to do all that. So I'm around the recovery every single day, all day. And my wife isn't. And neither of us go to meetings. We got 2 small kids. You know, we got gymnastics, we got rock climbing, we got something every single day. And you know, we just talk about like how we're, you know, not really in the program anymore. And then there's that kind of shame over here of like, oh, you're not in the program, but you're telling people you're in the program, but like, you know, whatever. And it's like we have all these definitions and categories for what we are or what we're doing. And really it's like, are you living your life? Are you being a good person? Are you raising your kids to be good people? Like that's kind of what the focus is now, is like, are you yourself healing? Are you doing things that is going to contribute to you healing and you being a better person and then contributing to the world in a positive way? If the answer is yes, no matter what you're doing, keep doing it. You know? And like, you know, I work with families a lot where, you know, we have, you know, intervention, then they go through treatment, and then they come out and they're not doing exactly what, you know, we had talked about, what the discharge plan was going to be, or, you know, whatever the recommendation was. And it's like, well, are they doing okay? Like, are they still sober? Are they destroying things? Are they, you know, are they able to maintain a relationship or this job or whatever? And it's like, yeah, then it's like, then let them do it. Yeah. Like, just if they're okay and they're happy and they're alive and you have a relationship with them and it's not objectionable to you, let it fly, man.
Yeah. And how can you support them during that time?
Yeah. How can you be there for them?
I feel like it was today, I was getting on his ass playfully about something that like I invited him to do, I guess, and he didn't partake, whatever, it may be, like gym stuff, right? And then now he's doing it. I forget what it was. And I was like, okay, sure. And he was like, yeah, guess what? I just changed my mind. You know? Like,
oh, that's right. It's about working out abs.
Yeah, he was like, I don't do any show off muscles.
I don't give a fuck about abs.
Yeah, and then I was like, okay, but now you're working, because I was like, core strength is imperative, this and that, and then now he's working out abs. He's like, I'm trying to get a 6-pack, and I'm like, you didn't listen to me back then. And he's like, well, I just fucking changed my mind, which is fine. It's natural. It happens. You know, and
changed my mind.
And that's
normalize changing your mind.
Normalize changing your mind, because you're gonna.
That was like 6 months ago. You know.
Yep. Yeah. And now you're still.
Summer's on the way.
Now
Tyler.
you're still fat.
I'm fucking fat. Jesus.
Well, Layne, appreciate you hopping on today, my man. Great insight, great perspective.
Oh yeah.
I really hope that. I think John and I both align with, you know, the perspective that you have to a certain degree, whatever that is, but knowing mainly underneath everything that like people are needing to be supported in any path that they take.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you being a part of Getting Sober Young today, man.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all having me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.